Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Mehna's Talks AI. Today I have another special guest with me. Eve, why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for the invitation. My name is Eve Salti. I'm the Senior Director in the AI Engineering team at Microsoft. I've been in this team for about 4 years. And before that, I worked at various other teams within Microsoft. I work at Google and also have experience. I started my career actually in a couple of startups.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us and agreeing to share your expertise. So Eve, I know that you're leading innovation teams at Microsoft Azure AI Foundry while advising a hub rooted in ancient Greek culture. So what parallels do you see between ancient wisdom and modern AI development?
Wow, that's a big
I know it's a
question.
very big, yes.
Well, I think there are some overarching principles when it comes to creativity, creating the conditions for prosperity, driving kind of innovation through partnerships that have been introduced and they were widely used in the ancient world. So I would think like at the core, some of these principles still are um, key components for growth and making sure that we have kind of like this North Star as
Mhm.
new technologies and new capabilities come to life.
That's great. And, I completely agree with you because even though I feel like we are seeing this rapid shift in AI and innovation, but we can still draw a lot from the ancient culture and the creativity that was, set as a foundation.
Yeah,
So what does your day-to-day look like right now, with Microsoft, and what does your work entail?
well, I'm kind of like in a special team within engineering, which is applied AI engineering. So we sit between kind of like product development and early adoption from customers and also a lot of our partners, startups, etc. So this is a very unique, it gives you a very unique vantage point. So it's not only like, how you build, how you design, and how you launch a product or a set of capabilities, but really you're taking it a step further to see how this lands and how this gets integrated into an overall workflow, infrastructure, set of use cases, scenarios that customers have. And this is where the truth really lies, right? Because you can create the perfect BRD, the business requirements document. You can create the perfect setup of tools or products or features that you feel is appropriate, but unless you are working and putting it to work with customers, you don't know how useful it is, how seamless it is, and how it works well with what they have. So I really really enjoy it because every day is different. We work with large enterprise customers, we work with small startups, we work with teams in Asia, we work with teams in Latin America and everywhere in between. So requirements change and also kind of like the focus points change, kind of like how things are adopted in China, where, kind of like all of the regulations are still fairly green, is very different. It's actually diametrically different for how things are adopted in Europe, where there is a long history of regulating, especially AI and tech in general, to make sure that, kind of like there are some guardrails that safeguards the experience for users across, all these different scenarios.
It's good that you touched a little bit on your responsible AI because I was reading a little bit on you and I have seen some of the work that you have done with Microsoft in terms of promoting responsible use of AI. So, do you want to share a little bit about, what that entails? And especially you mentioned that across different countries, like from China to Europe to North America, the regulations vary so much. Even like US and Canada, when I was working with the federal government in Canada, and I would liaison with my counterparts in Microsoft because they were a vendor, I would see the difference between, even they would say that, the way that they were serving the Canadian client versus the American client was so different. So it kind of diversify across continent. So, keeping all of that adoption and that in mind, how do we ensure like like an effective approach when it comes to responsible use of AI? So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
No, that's a great question, and that's at the heart of really adopting AI in the most appropriate way because the capability, the tooling, what you can do with it are very, very powerful. But also, it's not only about the what, it's about the how. So, one of the reasons why I joined or rejoined Microsoft was because of the strong stance that the company had, starting from the CEO across responsible AI principles. So, and I really loved how we took it a step further in engineering to develop actually tools that help users, developers, builders to really safeguard what they're building for their customers and their teams. And this work started, I think, many, many years, I think probably more than a decade ago, excuse me. And it was a cross-disciplinary team from different kind of functions that came up and they created a set of principles around fairness, reliability, safety, privacy, security, inclusiveness, and basically creating almost like checklists. And a lot of this was created for internal use to make sure that engineering teams across Microsoft had the same kind of like principles, tools, lines, lists, if you will, as we were all developing different capabilities, right? From Teams to Microsoft 365 to Dynamics, Windows to Bing and all of that. So I think this over time became kind of like a really great kind of like set of core principles that everybody can really adopt. So I've been sharing this framework, although it initially was an internal one. I've been sharing it with customers and they find it really, really useful because they don't have to start as they're developing their own kind of like AI circle of center of excellence and their own practices. They don't have to start from scratch, right? They can take this, they can adopt it, they can evolve it, they can customize it based on what they're doing. So I really love this. And even more, like, being in the engineering team, I really love the tools because it's really important as a builder, as a developer, not only to have a plethora of different AI models,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of benchmark them or evaluate them in terms of their fluency, their accuracy, their coherence. And this is very, very critical because although like AI models are somehow commoditized, so they kind of all doing fairly similar things, depending on the use case and what you're building, you want to make sure that the tool that and the model that you're using is the most appropriate. And there are a lot of other tools that I'm really, really excited about, and we're continuing to evolve this when it comes to content safety to make sure that we can enable teams to flag certain terms around hate, violence,
Mm-hmm.
self-harm, both on the input side and then on the completion side. And this
Mm-hmm.
safeguards the experience for all teams. And this can be very flexible, they can be customized, they can be turned off, on, whatever, right? But the point is like, it's I see responsible AI in terms of like what are the principles to help us kind of like plan this work in the most thoughtful way, and what are the tools that we give builders and developers to actually do this right.
No, that's really great. And do you, because you said you work across enterprise clients and also startup founders as well, do you see like a big difference in adoption or understanding a concept when you're working with startup versus when you're working with, enterprise or global clients?
Yeah, there are some really significant difference. Although I think now everyone has a kind of like they're putting AI as part of their strategy, as
Mm-hmm.
part of their differentiation when it comes to what they're building, whether it's a service, a solution, etc. So the motivation is fairly similar. Everybody wants to optimize what they're doing, to automate things that are redundant, they're a little bit more manual, but the implementation definitely changes. And also the way they adopt this technology changes. Enterprises, because they're they're complex and matrixed by design. They already have a lot of legacy infrastructure. So integrating AI capabilities into this broader set of workflows is much more complicated. So it takes time. They will need things, to be evaluated, and you need to plan for it. So the cycles are much longer. The implementation is much more complex because you have to think of like how
Mm-hmm.
things plug into existing workflows and infrastructure pieces. So adoption is a little bit slower, and also the model adoption cycle is different. So they want, because planning takes so long and implementation takes long or longer, I would say, they want to make sure that the life cycle of the models is longer as well. And we always take pride in kind of like releasing the newest and greatest models, whether it's multimodal or reasoning or now a combination of both. But enterprise customers are just like a little bit reluctant to jump into the new thing because they want to make sure that, what they already have, or by introducing a new model or a new version or a new set of capabilities, it doesn't break what they already have. It doesn't break their
Mm-hmm.
applications, whether it's their internal or external. Startups, on the other side, are much faster, right? Because they're smaller, they're more agile, they don't have legacy infrastructure, and they still see AI as a differentiator, but they're much faster to adopt things. So they will like really push us to allow them early access to the newest AI models. They're very quick to switch things out. So they're very, very agile in doing so. Yeah, so I would say this is kind of like the key differentiation. It's like, a tale of two cities, if you will. You have like different requirements on a large company that require more planning and more like, stability to a certain extent. And then you have startups on the other hand that are moving at the speed of light,
Mm-hmm.
requiring the latest and greatest.
No, that's very interesting. And I see it too in my own work as well. Because I work as a consultant in a consulting, like I run a farm. And when I work with large enterprise versus startups, I see the same thing that you mentioned. But
Mm,
another thing that I also experiencing right now is in terms of capacity building. So, there's one part, it's the tool itself, that do they have the infrastructure? Can they adopt? Is there enough, data structure that exists? Like, all of that cybersecurity, all of the technical aspect. But then another challenge that I am consistently coming across is the human side of things, where it's like, in terms of the skill set gap, I feel like the more we are having technology, the easier it's getting to learn things. Even for myself as well, like the last 1 year, I have learned so many tools, and I find that it's easier to learn these things now. But at the same time, when I'm working with startups or even enterprises, I'm seeing that resistance to wanting to learn. So it's easier to learn, but it's like they don't either want to try something new. So do you see that too in your day to day? That teams are like,
yeah.
we are happy what we are doing.
Yeah, I think that's human nature, right? Like, a lot of times we're resistant to change because it pushes us to get out of our comfort zone and be
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable learning something new and trying something new. It's like so it's kind of like a very uncomfortable space to say like, oh, I don't know this, or this is new,
Mm-hmm.
or I have a knowledge gap, I need to learn. That's the reality now. And I think that's kind of like a huge cultural shift that we're seeing. I see it from my end, from my personal end. I see it in my team. Things are moving really fast, right? There is no doubt about it. Like, when I was in the Windows team, we used to do 3-year planning cycles in engineering. This looks like ancient now, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's 3 years is relevant. And then even when I first joined, like, 4 months ago, this particular team, we were doing semester planning, right? So we were taking pride in being kind of like very agile. We were doing things every 6 months, which is like, a really, really short period of time. And now, even that is not really the case. Now we're doing iterative cycles. So we
Mm-hmm.
are learning as an organization, as a team, and as a group of individuals to change and shift our culture. And I see this like, it's easy to say because it sounds really that like the right thing to do, but it's very difficult to implement because it means that you need to work in a different speed. You need to have more agility, And you need to kind of like, really have the shorter sprints where you release things, it's 80/20. Some of it will work, some of it will not be ready for prime time. You fail fast, you reiterate again, and then you get it right. So it's a very, very different set of muscles that teams and individuals have to develop, and it's not easy. What I've seen working in companies and also in internally, because we're all struggling with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
To keep up with the pace of innovation and also be in front of it to just kind of like, make sure that we are not only we know what's out, but also we're picking the right things to
Mm-hmm.
implement in what we're doing, right? Like for example, now with agentic AI, we are internally picking these tools to automate and kind of like, optimize things that we're doing inside our teams, right? Like, we were doing some manual reporting or we were doing kind of like, some work that was not fully kind of like, automated. But there are two components to it that I think has helped us. And I've seen
Mm-hmm.
other customers kind of like, take advantage of it. First is introducing a center of excellence. Because AI innovation is happening across the organization. Like maybe it starts in the HR department because they're doing kind of like, a new employee onboarding agent or bot or whatever. Or, it might start in the marketing team because, they're using AI to kind of like, streamline their campaigns or further personalize the campaigns that they're doing or wherever, right? It can be in the robotic side, it can be in every whatever department, right? And it's really good to create kind of like that gravity center to share best practices, to share learnings inside so that you're not doing the same mistake over and over again. So, and then you're doing this knowledge transfer so others can like, again, not have, they don't have to start from scratch. They can start from something that, was already built maybe for, the financial analyst or maybe in the engineering team. And then you can take it and customize it and emulate it on, for your department or for your line of work. The other piece is constant skilling. And this is, the truth of life at this point. It doesn't matter if you are an entry level PM or a corporate vice president of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs to be skilled, and a lot of it is going to happen organically. Like in my team, like, we're developing agents to
Mm-hmm.
kind of like automate some of the reporting and, that we do. It's not like we're going and taking a class. We're just going into the playground and we're getting our hands dirty and we're
Okay, like
trying
just do it.
things and we're
Mm-hmm.
breaking things and it's okay, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's a cultural shift. You need to
Mm-hmm.
give permission to the
Mm-hmm.
individuals, the teams, to go in there, get their hands dirty, try things. Sometimes I would
It might
say,
not
like some,
work, right?
yes, exactly. And sometimes I feel like, people equate learning with a very
Mm-hmm.
traditional classroom. I'm going to go and take a class, or, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
go back to school, or all of this. And all of this, oops, and all of this are very viable options, right? But what also for me, part of the definition of learning is learning on the job.
Mm-hmm.
So really seeking these opportunities where you can really use the tools that are available, try them out and see kind of like, which are the areas where we're spending a lot of time, right? Which are the things that are manual? I think the litmus test for me is like, you know, think of like, if you had an intern or if you had an assistant, like a human assistant, what would you give them to do? And take this and see, like, based on the AI tools that you have, if you can automate this. And that's a way to learn. It's an active way to learn.
Mm-hmm. No, that's 100% true. And I'm also very inspired by, all the work that you have done, especially to empower women entrepreneurs. I think you have been a board member with B STEM project, then you were at We Global Studios. I think you're still an active board member there now as well. And as a woman in STEM myself, like I've often seen the disparity, especially as you move up, the disparity kind of becomes more and more. And I'm noticing it way more as I'm traveling across Asia. Like there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in this part of the world as well. But, as someone who uplifts women in tech and education spaces, what do you think is still missing in the AI inclusion conversion? And how do we make space for more voices in bringing and shaping the future of AI?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we are, in terms of STEM and having kind of like more diverse, more diversity in the STEM areas. I feel like because we were talking about it for the past 15 years. I know I remember I was talking about it when I was in the education industry for many years before, where we literally had like a, a, a huge gap. But now over time, I feel like a lot of the campaigns or a lot of the efforts, whether they're kind of like from the private sector, from the public sector, governments, NGOs, like, I think the whole ecosystem came together and we're slowly, I would say slowly, still slowly closing the gap. So it's great to see more women, more diverse voices and faces in the, being interested in, whether it's computer science or data science or any part of the STEM world. When it comes to enabling these non-traditional profiles, if you will, in either the broader technology world and also as entrepreneurs, kind of creating their own business, this is where we still have a really big gap. And I think kind of like, it's a very, very complex problem. I'm not even suggesting that I fully understand it or that I have the magic wand to address it. But I think, there are some things that I'm picking up to do in
Mm-hmm.
order to start creating kind of like change, right? And I think one is showcasing role model. The reason why I do a lot of this kind of like work with like, podcasts and presentations is to show that visibility matters. It's really important to have diverse voices in the tech side, and also showcasing women founders, what they do, what are their struggles, what are the challenges, and how did they overcome this, coming from non-traditional backgrounds. I think it's really important to create kind of like, platforms where we can share the stories, the wins, the struggles, how they pivoted. I think there is a stigma associated specifically with women entrepreneurs and women founders or non-traditional founders, let's say, because I think the issue is bigger than, women in specific, is that we are not allowing ourselves to fail. There is a stigma associated with failing, which is not the case with other cohorts. Because, if we fail, then it means that it's lack of competency. If, for example, a man fails, it's because they were bold. So I think we need to kind of like, really create the conditions for more women and other individuals from non-traditional backgrounds to really showcase what they're doing, the work that they do, their struggles and their success to create this new paradigm. Also, and the one paramount thing, because I think also what I've noticed over the years is that there are a lot of organizations and groups that cater to like, women entrepreneurs, and it's all about community and skilling and learning and all of that. And to be honest, I'm a little bit losing my patience with this because I don't think we need another webcast. I don't think we need another community call. I think that's another misinterpretation of women. Oh, they just want to connect with each other. No, we want to connect with each other because we want to exchange best practices and because we
Mm-hmm.
want to accelerate our access to funding.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's get the cracks of a lot of these efforts. I want to make sure that, and this is where I'm very passionate about, and that's kind of like what I'm personally involved through the We Global Studios. Is I really like the initiative because it's not just a platform for people to get access to guidance and mentors and templates and step-by-step guides and all of that, but it's access to capital. So we
Mm-hmm.
provide access to VCs, to angels, to funds. We help them raise money. We help them prepare their pitch presentation. We get them access to grant programs. So this is what is really critical, right? Like, I mean, I think we need at this point, we need to put our money where our mouth is.
Hmm.
And that's where I'm really passionate, as you can tell.
No, no, that's true because I think, like you said, there's already so much resources that exist, and especially with AI, I feel like when you are thinking about the education space or learning space, before it used to be helpful to have templates or step-by-step guide and everything. Now it's like you already have that information in the palm of your hand with few prompts. Right now, I think what we really need is like you said, access to funding so that women entrepreneurs who have great ideas, who have a passion, they can implement and execute on their vision. And that's something that we are struggling with as well. Like in Canada, I'm seeing that as well. I think there are initiatives, like there's so many organizations that are focusing on creating a community and, building mentorship program and whatnot. Those are good to some extent, but I think, like you said, we need to go a little bit beyond that in order to, bridge that gap. So that's really inspiring that you're doing that work. Woman empowerment is a huge passion of mine. So it's like I've learned a lot from you today in terms of when I move forward to do some of my work. So we're coming to kind of the closing of the podcast. So what would you say to a woman who's listening right now? So how do they start and how can they even lead in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing that I'm hoping that this comes across, and the one thing that I want people to take away from our conversation is that AI is not an option. I think it's an imperative, and it will be even a more prominent part of our life and our work. So opting out is not an option. You don't have to be, though, a developer or a data scientist or even highly technical to really use AI, right? There are a lot of, like at Microsoft, we coined the term Copilot, which is
Mhm.
actually what it means. I think from a branding standpoint, it's like genius because it really enables you as an individual, you don't need to know anything, to use some of the latest and more innovative capabilities that we have in a very non-tech kind of like,
Mhm.
construct. So you can summarize a conversation, when you have a call, and you can have your online facilitator do this. You can summarize the next steps from a conversation. It's like having an intern, as I said, do the work for you. There are also a lot of low code and no code capabilities that you can use, drag and drop things. You can create kind of like, small automations without really building a complicated kind of like, construct. So I would argue, like, I mean, I would invite everyone to be open, to be curious. I think that's absolutely key because things are changing really rapidly. Um, and there are a lot of like, low tech AI that people can play with, you can start with. And then if you feel really adventurous, you can transfer your work into a more pro code playground. But the one thing, like, if I have to close with one thought, is that a common misconception that I see is that these doom and gloom scenarios around AI, and this might be true, and I don't know because I don't have a crystal ball and I'm not a futurist, so I don't know what's going to happen. But I think it's important for all of us, and I do it for myself, to stay human centered. I really love the new tools, the technology, the AI landscape is really moving super fast. But when we build and when we develop things with humans in mind, I think we end up with the best of both worlds. Right? So we're taking all the things that are mundane, repetitive, that, we shouldn't be doing anyway, and we're outsourcing these to AI. And this frees us time to do interesting, creative things that require a lot of critical thinking that might not be the strength of an AI model. So I would say be curious and stay human centered.
No, that's the most important. Thank you so much, Eve. It was
Thank you.
pleasure having you here, and thank you so much for sharing so many great anecdotes. To the listeners, I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Stay tuned for our next guest as well. And until then, have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.